I decided to make this model in flight and on a display stand due to the lack of wheel well detail. However, I needed to make the support structure for both the stand and to attach the landing gear doors. The support structure was made from various lengths of both the sprue frame and various lengths of evergreen strip styrene. After the structure was glued into place with model cement, the rest of the assembly could continue. to add a bit of contrast to the metallic paintwork, I brushed over a coat of Vallejo metal colour chrome. After drying, the random panels were masked off. Then a coat of titanium silver and Tamiya thinner was brushed with a small flathead paintbrush and a roundhead paintbrush. And once the paint was dried, the jet exhaust was masked off. Then a coat of Citadel Leadbelcher and Citadel Silver paint mix was applied. Then a few segments were painted in a Citadel Leadbelcher and Vallejo Game Colour Tinny Tin paint mix, which also gave a bit of contrast to the paintwork on the afterburner. And with the paintwork on the afterburner completed, the tail stabilizer was then painted in flat red. The chosen RCAF paint scheme also has patches of fluorescent orange, so to replicate that in miniature, I first had the areas sprayed in flat white, then 4 to 5 coats of Vallejo model colour fluorescent orange was painted on both the fuselage and wing tanks, with plenty of drying time between each coat. And after the last coat of fluorescent orange had dried, the rest of the model was painted. Came with only decals for a Luftwaffe F-104G. However, I decided to go for another paint scheme, in this case a 1962 to 1965 era Royal Canadian Air Force CF-104, using a mixture of spare decals, the included decals from the kit, and homemade decals. I was able to recreate this paint scheme. And speaking about the homemade decals, the decals were first made in Adobe Photoshop, in this case the serial numbers. Then the serial numbers and RCAF roundels were printed onto clear inkjet decal paper that, after drying, was sealed with microscale decal film. And after 24 hours of drying time, a second coat of decal film was applied. Once dried, the decals were applied with microset, with the RCAF roundels applied onto the tops of the wings, and the small centre maple leaves were applied onto the spare RAF roundels on the fuselage. The Canadian ensign flag decal was printed onto white decal paper and was applied onto the tail in the same way. Then the wing tanks were glued onto the wings with Breville contactor cement. After drying, the underwing decals were applied onto the model, along with a spare red line decal around the fuselage. I also painted a bit of scrap white decal paper in multiple coats of fluorescent orange that, after drying, was sealed with microscale decal film. Then, small squares were cut from the sheet using both a metal ruler and a hobby knife. Once done, the orange square decals were applied onto the wing tanks, and with the last square decal applied onto the model, the decaling was completed. The canopy that came with this kit had the frame moulded on the inside of the part. To paint the part, I painted the interior flat black, then using it as a guide, the top side was masked off, then painted in Citadel Leadbelcher and silver. I decided to display this model on a stand, in this case recreating a scale model gate guardian diorama. After looking on Google Images, I found these images of this preserved CF-104 that I decided to base the gate guardian diorama on, including recreating in miniature the shape of the concrete plinth. Off camera, I had cut a strip of 1 cm wide wooden stake to the length of 12 cm, with one of the ends cut at a 45-degree angle. Then the angle was masked off with a layer of putty spread across the unmasked wood that, after curing, was sanded with coarse sandpaper to simulate a faux concrete texture. Then I attached the wooden strip to a bamboo coaster using a 3.5mm screw. I also used the end of a screw hook for the model to be attached onto the display base. Then bits of 10mm XPS foam were cut to shape to mimic the curved concrete supports, which were then glued onto the top of the stand using Mod Podge matte glue and an old paintbrush. After drying, Vallejo model putty was used to fill the gaps between the foam and putty layer. Also, a layer of air-drying clay was applied to the base, with a layer of gesso primer brushed over the foam. And after spray painting the stand flat black, the diorama was painted, starting with the painting of the groundwork. And with the model attached onto the display stand with hot glue, both the model and diorama were finished, and so is this video. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck with all your ongoing scale modelling projects. Here it is, the completed model and diorama.